Whenever you're ready.
All right. So, for a long time, a lot of people have maintained that milk and dairy is necessary if you want to have, you want to grow big and strong, if you want to have strong bones. And they say, well, you need it in your regular diet to, get these nutrients. And you see that with things like the Got Milk commercials and the food pyramid. A big chunk of it is dedicated to dairy. And there's also people who maintain that, you don't really need that much dairy, that it's kind of unnecessary. It's not some superfood that's going to prevent you from having bone problems. And I put it to you that dairy is completely unnecessary for good health. The reasons are alternatives to dairy can give you just as many nutrients. Milk is not some it fails to prevent most bone problems, and third and final, milk consumption is problematic for the human body. Now, about the alternatives to milk. Milk is not the sole provider of the nutrients it gives. A registered dietitian and best-selling author, Cassie Bjork, stated that we don't have any nutritional requirement for cow's milk and obtain the same nutrients in meat, seafood, veggies, fruits, and nuts. Another registered dietitian, Andy Bellotti, states that milk is simply not necessary in the diet. Every nutrient in milk can be found in whole plant foods, and some nutrients needed for healthy bones like vitamin K and manganese are not in milk. So they're saying that you can have a completely adequate diet without dairy. And we can see this in milk substitutes, like soy milk and almond milk, which are oftentimes enriched to give more nutrients. The Department of Agriculture, in their database, which was updated in 2015, you can see that soy milk and cow's milk have about the same amount of protein, about the same amount of calcium, and about the same amount of pretty much every nutrient you can think of, which just shows you can have a perfectly adequate diet without dairy. And this leads me to my second point, that milk fails to prevent bone problems. It's not a superfood that's gonna, keep your bones crazy strong or something. Harvard, more specifically the Harvard School of Public Health, released a press release in 2014 stating, there is little evidence that high dairy intake protects against osteoporosis. Osteoporosis being a common problem with the bones. And they're right, there really is little evidence. For example, a study conducted by the Journal of Bone and Mineral Research in 2011 found that the related risk for hip fractures between people who drank one glass of milk a day and people who didn't was 0.99. Now, what that means is for every 100 people in the non-dairy group who got a hip fracture, 99 people in the dairy drinking group got a hip fracture. So the number's 100 to 99. I mean, they're almost the same, and the difference is minuscule, pretty much negligible, which just shows there really is no evidence that milk will prevent any of these problems. Now, my third point, milk is problematic to the human body inherently and naturally. I'm sure you've never heard of like a fox going to a field every day and drinking milk from a deer's udders. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense from a natural point of view. And yet humans do this. And you can see in our history, in our evolutionary history, that we really aren't meant to do this. It's not natural. The University College of London released a press release in 2009, and in that they stated that they found that the gene for lactose tolerance didn't appear in humans until about 7,500 years ago, which is relatively recent. So before that, humans couldn't even stomach milk, and even today, in our world, most people have lactose intolerance. A scientific meta-analysis published in 2017 found that about 65 to 70% of today's adults in our world are lactose intolerant, which means most people in the world are lactose intolerant. So it really doesn't make sense that milk is necessary when it's so just problematic for the human body. So it, you know, you can get most of your nutrients from milk out of alternatives to milk. Milk is not it fails to prevent bone problems, and it's just inherently problematic to humans. And that is why consumption of milk is unnecessary for human health. Thank you.
All right, Quinlan, the proposition is very clearly identified. There's a good layout of what the secondary points are going to be. I like the fact that in your attention device you try and set up what the controversy is, so that's solid. The secondary points are listed at the beginning. You signpost them in the body of the speech. The transitions between the points, they're not necessarily always graceful, but they are clear, and that's also appreciated. I thought that you did a very good job citing the sources for your information. You usually gave us the qualifications. You made sure to suggest that they're academic sources. I do think there are probably some places that there's room for people to maybe pick at some of the information, but the information that you presented for the most part is solid. The inferences that you're drawing from it are, you've explained what they are, and we'll hear what the answer is from the respondent later on, but I thought that you did a very good job on those sorts of things, so the generalizations are also solid. Presentation, it's not a big deal, but there's a little bit more walking around than you probably want to be doing in a short amount of time. If you're up there for an hour, oh right, changing your position 15 times makes sense. But if you're up there for 5 minutes, you know, the 15 shifts looks a little anxious, that's all. All right, thank you very much.